locked up for it. But it went on then, and it was pretty normal, pretty common.
When they were securing these perimeters, that was mostly the Marines that did that?
No, it was frequently the Marines. It depended on where the airplane went down. But, we worked closely with the Marines. So they did not have observation airplanes. They canceled them out sometime in '65, and so '65 and '66 I was there. They didn't have them, and that's where we stole a lot of our parts, was from the planes they had parked. But so we worked and did all their flying for them at that type.
Okay, I see. You'd mentioned that the dust sometimes would actually ruin the engines, correct?
Yeah.
They get in the. I mean, how did the dust get into the oil? I mean,
well, we tried to keep it out, but we had open cans. We had 55-gallon drums of oil, and an oil can with a spout on the bottom of it. As much as we tried to keep those wrapped up, there would be dust and stuff blowing into them. So even if you take it out and wash it out with gasoline, there was always a little dust getting in. But the intake on the airplane is down low on the front, and it was just like a screen mesh that you kept oil on it to keep, so it would pick up the sand. But they were always getting to the point that sucked sand through those things. We had the same trouble with the M151 Jeep. Had 2 universals in each of the 4 axles, plus 2 universals in each of the 2 drive shafts, and those things wouldn't hold up over there. It was a constant struggle changing the universal joints.
Okay. You said you did make use of the GI Bill.
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe at all what it was like to file it, prior to when you were going home? I know you mentioned a little bit about it in your actual return home.
My feelings of returning home was very cold. Kathy and my parents came to meet me over in Morgantown at the airport and bring me back. It was a cold, dreary night for one thing, but it was nice to have them come and get me. But then in town in Weston, that's where my folks were living at the time, I stayed with them for a couple of months till I went off to school in Oklahoma. And people kind of looked at you like they didn't know what to do with you. The people that I've known all my life in town, because they knew you were just back from Vietnam, and and I wasn't sure what to do with myself either, probably for those couple of months, just hanging around. So it was kind of an unwelcome feeling almost that I had when I came home.
Distanced, possibly?
Distance, yeah, absolutely distanced. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything that you would like to add? Possibly advice to our young people that are serving today, or possibly individuals thinking about joining the military?
Well, it's a different world than it was when I was in. I've got some nieces and nephews in, and I can't believe how restricted they are. I mean, they couldn't even borrow parts off of a Jeep that was broken down along the road, and we'd go out and steal them, take them home and sell them. And the same we did with guns, because we were always coming across captured weapons, and we could trade beef from the Seabees, frozen beef, to the special forces out in the nowhere that had a load of recaptured weapons, and take those in town and sell them to Marines for souvenirs. They don't have those privileges anymore, and just the whole lifestyle. I think we didn't salute people around our place at all. We just were just a group of guys doing a job. I think the job we were doing was one of the more dangerous jobs in the military. They don't do it now. It's all done by remote aircraft. But I think I tell people, if they sending their kids off to the military and say they're going to make a man out of them, you got to remember they're also making a killer out of them. And part of the way they do that is trying to separate you from your morals that you were brought up with, in order to get you anxious to go out and kill somebody. It's not a normal peacetime activity. They're very good at it in the Army. I mean, they use peer pressure to do that. And it didn't bother me at the time. I could see what they were doing, but it didn't bother me. I'm not sure I'd recommend anybody to send their kids to the military, just for that reason. However, I will say that I think the military did me a lot of good. It gave me a chance to grow up a lot. It gave me a lot of self-confidence. By the time I came back, I felt like I could handle pretty much any situation. And I probably got a lot further in life than I would have otherwise. But I'm not sure I'd recommend it. There's a lot of people, there's some people that shouldn't absolutely not be in the military. If you can't conquer fear and move on easily, then you shouldn't be there. I think I had maybe four times in Vietnam that I got absolutely totally scared, you know. And I thought this is the end. But I've also been blessed with the ability to get over it, you know, quickly and not freeze up and just sit there like a lump, which some people do. We had one guy, and why they had him in the military, I don't know. He was a brave fella for all that he went through. But in my room in the hotel, I don't remember his name, and I don't know if I could even find it, but he was like Barney Fife on television, only a little more so, if you've ever watched old Andy Griffin shows. And when they hit our hotel, and we were locked in we were trapped in the hotel, and we were supposed to fall out to the balcony to defend the outside perimeter. He was one of us, you know, in that room. We had a big window that had double panes that opened, and it wasn't smart to sit too much time in front of those things. And the door that went out. So obviously, if you go out and it was a concrete balcony about its typical height like this, but it was probably set up brick with plastered concrete on it, so it stopped bullets pretty well. But you know, we all grabbed our guns and hit the balcony. Well, this kid came out the door with us and was out there on the balcony, all hunched down the corner, and he said, "Oh no, I forgot my gun! I forgot my gun!" You know, so he jumped back through the window and threw his gun out the window, and of course it was a tile floor and concrete walls, and the thing hits bangity bang and bouncing all around, and then he starts throwing his magazines, his 20-round clips out the window, and bullets and everything else, shells. And then he comes falling back out the window, and just an absolute nervous wreck. And within a minute or two after that, I looked over, and he was all broken out in boils. The thing I admired about him was the fact that with that much fear, he didn't run the other direction. You know, he could have just gone back in the hallway, but he didn't. And I appreciated that about him, but he shouldn't have been there. And then they made him a door gunner on a helicopter because he was drafted, so he didn't have a choice. You know, he did with him whatever. That lasted less than a week until I don't know where he went from there, but he left our hotel room. But he fell out of the helicopter during one of their battles, you know. And you had on a helicopter door gunner. I never used it because I was just temporary in there. I just sit in the doorway. But he had a strap that would give you about 10 feet. You could reach the other gun and the other side of the helicopter if you needed to, or anywhere in that area. So when you fall out, you're 10 feet below the helicopter, and he was too shook up to climb back up the cable. And he hung the rest of the battle out there. They brought him back into the airfield and set him on the ground, and then landed over beside him. And that was his last helicopter ride, I think. But why they would have that guy there, once you've analyzed, it wasn't cowardice, it was just nerves, you know. It just wasn't suited for it. There's people that shouldn't be there. There's people that shouldn't be flying airplanes, there's people that shouldn't be driving trucks, you know, because there's things you run into that stresses that you've got to be able to handle.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country, and I especially want to thank you for taking time to do this interview.
My pleasure.